Hi everyone, it's me, Spring, the fiber enthusiast, and welcome to the channel and welcome to part of our land here on the ranch. All right, today's going to be a little different, and I am going to be chopping this video together, just kind of a little forewarning. I have some pre-recorded footage, and I'm going to insert that in different parts as well as what I go over right now. I'm out doing farm chores this evening, and I decided that I wanted to show you all what I'm going to be up to next. So anyway, as I was driving back through here, I decided that it's time to start looking at the walnuts, the black walnuts specifically. And I'll walk over here and show you. We have several black walnut trees here. And let me get a limb. Let's see if I can get you up in here. Here we have a cluster of 4 black walnuts right there. Okay, so why am I talking about these black walnuts? Well, I'm going to pull one down. The reason I'm talking about these black walnuts is I want to harvest some, probably get, half gallon or so to throw in the freezer for when I want black walnuts in something. And I'll do that occasionally. So here we have a black walnut. Now, if you're not familiar, there's black walnut stain, there's different types of black walnut wood for making things. You can collect dye, and this is where I'm going with this. You can get dye from the hull, the husk here itself, the bark, the wood. You can get all kinds of dye. But this year I thought I would bring you along for a little trip, and this is what the outside of the black walnut looks like. And just smelling it, it's very citrusy. There's not, other than maybe like a lime or grapefruit, that's kind of a combination of the two is what I smell. So what happens is when you take the hull off, you can use that hull and cook it down and create a deep dye, a brown colored dye. And depending on how far you cook it down and how many times you've dyed out of that same pot, depends on the strength of the dye itself. But I'm going to go ahead and crush this with my foot. But I can tell just by squeezing on it, see how it's indented, that it's just about ready to come off the tree. Another way that I can tell is you can see that it's not a solid green like tennis ball. You can see that it's got some spots on it. That's where I pulled it off the tree. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera around and crush this with my foot. Okay, so here it is on the ground. I'm just going to step on it just by using my weight and my boot. So there we have it crushed. And now I'm not going to be using this specific one for throwing in the kettle to use for dye, but just to give you an idea, this part right here is what you would receive if you were buying a regular like English walnut in the store that still has the shell on it. That part right there is what you would be receiving. Now, these are black walnuts, and that shell is super, super, super hard. And the outer part of it is very, very soft. Let me see if I can get it where there's not too much juice going to get on my hands. So you can kind of see where I've squished it there. Now you see the inside of that is brown. Let me set that down. Like right in here is brown. And that's the dye. That's where the dye comes from, is that coloring. Let's see if I can pick this up. Here we go. So you see that golden yellow and brown color? Yeah, that's what's going to come out in the water when, in fact, it's already starting on my hand. That's what's going to come out in the water when I start to boil it down. So that'll be the next step. I will collect as they drop, and then start boiling them down, and we will dye probably some wool and maybe even some cotton yarn at that point. So I wanted to take you on that adventure with me. Now, why I'm kind of chopping this video together is because I recorded 2 weeks ago, and the fruit itself was not coming off the tree at that point. They were still very much on the tree. Well, since then, they have fallen. So I have a small little bucket with a few in it, and we're going to do a small batch together, nothing really big. But I did want to add in some of that footage from the previous video recordings, so that way you can see more of the fruit. I'm going to try to do the best I can with what I have. I do have a little bit of notes here that I want to go over with you. Black walnuts, when you're using it to dye fiber, it doesn't require a mordant to be colored fast. So therefore, you don't have to pre-treat your fiber. Black walnuts are super easy to dye with because they contain tannins. They literally stain everything. Been there, done that before. I collected a 55-gallon drum full and ended up with about a gallon bag of nuts. And in the process of doing that, my hands turned a deep, deep brown, even with gloves on. So they do stain everything they touch, your clothing, everything. It works best if you use natural fibers versus a synthetic. So your 100% wool or cotton is going to be the best, which are two of the fibers that I will be using for this experiment with you. Let's see. A few of the things that you would need, of course, is your black walnut fruit. Now, I have a few here that are still green. That's what they look like when they come off of the tree. And you will need these. Now, for a small batch, roughly 6 to 7 of these will do you good. So you need your black walnuts. You also will need a pair of gloves, unless you want your hands to be this really deep, rich brown for a long time, because the dye will do that. Old clothes. You definitely want to wear something that you're not too worried about getting stained. A stock pot that you will not cook food in. This is dye specific. You do not want to put any food in a pot that you are going to extract the dye out of these walnuts. So make sure that your stock pot is something that can be utilized for just these type of scenarios. Let's see, other optional items is a hammer, a mesh bag, or a pantyhose. The pantyhose, you can actually put all your black walnuts in there, husks and all in there, crush them down, and just leave them in that mesh bag or pantyhose. A hammer would be for cracking the nut open once the husk is off, if you want to retrieve the nut meat inside of the hard shell, because it is super hard. I actually, when I previously did it, I used a vise to crack the hull. Let's see. If you want to do about 6 skeins of yarn, it's recommended about 20 black walnuts. And as I said, 6 to 7, 8 for a small batch. And other interesting facts is you can dye from the bark You can dye from the wood. You can dye from the actual fruit that comes off of the tree. Also, the roots system themselves are very poisonous to a lot of other vegetation underneath of the, normally that would grow underneath trees. Won't grow underneath a black walnut because the root system is poisonous. So that's just some of the things that I've wrote down. As far as when to harvest, it's around fall, and as I said, you'll notice that they start to fall as soon as they hit the ground. I want to show you a couple examples. So as soon as they hit the ground, they start to decay. They start to turn brown and deteriorate. As they go, let's see if I can find a good example here. As they start to go, you get this shiny color underneath. They get really slimy up underneath. Now I'll open one of these green ones up for you. And let me see, I'm going to go ahead and get another glove just to protect both hands, because y'all know that I have to have my hands in my videos for tutorials. So we're going to attempt to keep them stain free for a while. All right. So as you will see in a little clip that I put in of me taking one of these off the tree, I put it on the ground and I stepped on it. Now this one has been on the ground for a little bit, so it's not going to be required, but it's very soft, and you can open it up just like you would an orange. Now this meaty, fleshy part inside, that is where the actual dye ends up coming from. Now, underneath of this, which if I can rub it down just a little bit, you'll see the color change. So here we have where I've rubbed down on it, and here is the actual fresh when I cracked it open. So here we go, and here we go. So once we get that part off, that's the part that you want for actually dyeing the fiber. And I'm just chunking it in a pot that I do not use for food again. Now, once we get down to the nut itself, this is what it looks like. Sorry, it's kind of blurry being out here. There we go. That's a little better. So that's the nut itself, and it's just like an English walnut. You would crack this open and grab the nut meat from inside. Now, this is why you wear gloves. As that dries, it turns an awful brown on your skin. So you can see that there. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this pot and break these down and add water. I'm going to let them soak in water for several hours. Just allow them to just soak in water. Then I will take and put them on a fire, and we will come back for that part. We will create a fire and put a grate over the top of the fire and start the boiling process. We want to heat that up and really draw as much of it out as we possibly can. That way we can get all that good dye that we want. So we're going to go ahead and start crushing these down, putting water on them, and simply just let them sit while we create a fire. And again, like I said, we're just going to be crushing each and every single one of them until we have all of that good meaty flesh underneath available to dye from. All right, everyone. I hope that you're enjoying this so far. And if nothing else, enjoy the scenery. All right, everyone. We will be back shortly, and start the boiling process. Okay, so we have had them in the pot soaking for, I don't know, probably about 4 hours now, and got them on the fire and just kind of stirring them around a little bit here and there. But I wanted to show y'all what we were up to as far as working on the dye. So here's where I've been stirring it. You can see on the wood the different color. All right, so what I'm gonna do is keep on working on that. Now, once it comes to a boil, and it boils for a little bit, I'm gonna use an old towel that I have and some wood clamps there and clamp it on to create like a mesh screen, and take that out and pour it in there. That way I can capture in that towel the bits and pieces of the outer shell and any particles that might be floating through there. I'm just going to strain it one time. Then what I'm going to do is I have 3 different things here. I have some 100% wool. I have some 100% cotton. This is like rug cotton. It's real thick. And then I have some regular roving fiber that I'm also going to place in the pot as well. Now, all of them have zip ties on it, just so that way I can move it around into the liquid. All right, I'll bring you back when we get to this point. Just wanted to show you all real quick. The sun is setting, and this is the sunset tonight. Got some color in the background, so we get to watch that while we're cooking down the black walnuts. Okay, so we're still out here, and the walnuts are simmering at this point, and I've got the pot set up with the towel inside of it being held by clamps and a little bit of an indentation to create a straining effect. And so all I'm going to do next is take it off the fire and pour it into that and allow it to strain, and that way we can collect the impurities, being the walnut hulls and all the little particles and stuff that are floating around, and collect just the dye in the pot to the best of our ability. So that's where we're at. All right, so that's what I have left in the pot from cooking it down. And now all I have to do is lift the towel out to finish collecting out the rest of that. And then we can dip our fiber down into the liquid that is now a dye. So I'm going to remove my clamps. Them out of the way. You can kind of see from over there a little bit as to how dark this towel is from the dye already. All right, set that out of the way. I'm going to bring you over a little bit closer so that way you can see the actual dye. Okay, so here it is. Nice up close and personal. Look how dark that is. So I have 3 different twist ties or zip ties here. One with cotton, one with wool, and one with a wool blend. And that is the fiber roving that I'll be able to spin. So we're gonna go ahead and do a little dunking. See if I can get it to where you can see the color starting to absorb. Now these are not pre-soaked, pre-treated. The cotton is taking it up quickly. So here's the cotton. I'll go ahead and set that down in there. And the roving is the next one. Roving is picking it up pretty quickly. Set it down in there. And now I'm gonna work on getting this wool down in there. And attempt not to get it all over myself because I didn't put my gloves on. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and continue to work on getting this down in the dye solution here, our black walnut dye, and I will be back. All right, so we finally got the wool all down in there and soaking up some of that dye. So I know the lighting's not going to be the greatest as far as, you know, tonight. I just wanted to include you in on this process, this whole process. And I'm going to let it sit for quite a while and absorb as much of the dye as possible. And then we'll start rinsing and letting it dry. I will show you the end result.